Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this online message this weekend at Deep Rivers Church. As always, it's summer, so if you are out and about, thank you for carving out some time to watch this, even though you're out of town. And if you're not feeling well, hopefully you bounce back quick and you'll be able to come join us again on a Sunday morning real soon. Hey, coming up Wednesday night is Prayer House, just so you need to know. 7 o'clock, summer kind of slows down a little bit. Check the email that this link was sent to, because there's a lot of other things going on. Hopefully you have a summer calendar that's laminated with a magnet on it. Hopefully it's on your fridge. If you don't have one, we have new ones here at the church, so come by and grab them. All right, we're doing a summer series of different biographies on the Bible. We're going to look at 6 men and 6 different women over the course of the summer. This week we're looking at the life of Ruth. Now, one of the kind of fun things about putting a message together is you look at the passage and you get some ideas and you kind of see what kind of, theme might form that you weren't aware of. And as I was putting the message together this week, it kind of came back to the one word, embrace. There are some things in the life of Ruth, I think you can make the argument, that we need to be willing to embrace. All right, so remember that word, embrace, as we work through this. All right, so Ruth chapter 1 and then a little bit of chapter 2 says this: In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi, and his sons were named Mahlon and Chilion. When Naomi's husband died, she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth. After they had lived there for about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died. When Naomi heard that the Lord had come to aid his people, providing them food, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to go there, Bethlehem. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughter-in-laws, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them goodbye. They wept aloud and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home. I am too old to have another husband. And even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I had a husband and gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? No, my daughters, it is bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." As they wept aloud again, at this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed Naomi goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. So the 2 women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived, the whole town was stirred because of them, and the women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" "Don't call me Naomi," she said. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune on me." So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. Ruth said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain left behind anyone whose eyes I find favor." Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." So she went out, entered the field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in the field belonging to Boaz. All right, so there's some things I think that we can learn from the life of Ruth, and again, using that word embrace. And the first one is we need to embrace the reality of loss and change. We live in a broken down, fallen world. There is going to be loss and there's going to be change. I know we like things to be constant. We get in a comfortable spot. We don't like change, and we certainly don't like loss. In this story, there's famine in Bethlehem. All right? Where God's chosen people live, they experienced famine. Naomi and her family, they go to Moab, and then they lose 3 husbands. She loses her husbands, and her 2 sons die. The daughter-in-laws are left without husbands. Naomi and her daughter-in-laws are left in a very precarious situation, a very precarious circumstance. So they didn't have the same kind of social safety nets that we did. So widows or people like that, they're in a bad, very, very precarious spot. So the lesson for us in this idea of embracing reality and loss, we need to acknowledge that life is challenges. Life is full of challenges, and we need to recognize that and embrace it. Life is often filled with unexpected hardship and changes. We will encounter difficult seasons, difficult situations, and difficult seasons. It's important to recognize the challenges are part of the human experience. That's part of being human, living in a fallen world. We're not in heaven yet. Okay, so there's going to be challenges along the way. This week, that little oil light went on in my car. I got the oil changed, and I thought was the end of it. And then right after, that same day after I get the oil change, the oil light comes back on. And you would have thought, my first thought was not very good. All right. So life is full of challenges. Life is full of little red lights showing up on your dashboard. We need to just be willing to embrace that life is sometimes going to have its challenges. God does not promise us a life free from trials. All right, God, that's not a promise that God ever made. He promises to walk with you through them. He makes our issues, our challenges, our hard seasons easier, but he doesn't take them away. The passage of the Psalm says, "I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." God walks with me through the hard times. We want to run through valleys. That's not God's plan. We walk. He walks with us. And I think we all recognize the need for refining in our own life. I think if we're going to be honest, we recognize that we need challenges to refine us. But the thing is, we want refinement, but we don't want any fire. It just doesn't work that way. Oftentimes God uses hard things to bring refining into our lives. Second thing is we need to recognize our commitment to people matters. We need to embrace other people. We need to embrace a commitment. We need to embrace relationship with other people, especially when they're difficult. Naomi hears that God is providing food for his people back in Bethlehem, so she decides to go home. She urges her daughter-in-laws to stay in Moab, stay here, rebuild your lives. Orpah says, yeah, I'm going to stay, but Ruth clings and declares. Ruth clings, use the word embrace. Ruth clings to Ruth and says no, and then she declares, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. The lesson is that we need to be committed to relationships. Sometimes we need to embrace the idea of being deeper, committed deeper to our relationships. Ruth's loyalty is to Naomi. It's a powerful example of steadfast love and commitment in our relationships. We are called to demonstrate unwavering support and loyalty. All right, that should be part of our commitment, is unwavering support and loyalty. Now, I have two words that I must share at this point. That's the word boundaries and enabling. In our relationships, there are times when we might have to establish boundaries. If we're in a relationship with somebody who's abusive to us, we might need to say, hey, this is not healthy. I need to set up some boundaries. All right, so yes, we need to be committed, but we also need to have healthy boundaries in place. I think all relationships require some sort of boundaries. And the other one is enabling. We need to be committed to people, but we also need to be willing to say, no, that's not good for you. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to drive an alcoholic person to the liquor store. I'm not supporting them in doing that. So we need to be committed to relationships, but we need to do it in a God-honoring way. True commitment often requires a sacrifice and courage. Seen by Ruth, we too quickly move on to different relationships. I'm grateful that we have cars, but in some ways, cars make us more mobile. And when we're more mobile, we don't have to stick with hard relationships. You don't like people at your church, you just hop in their car and go to another church, all right? Before we had cars, we were kind of stuck in close proximity with people, kind of forced us to get along. So as much as I appreciate the mobility that we have, it kind of also makes it easier to not stick with hard relationships. So we need to embrace a commitment to relationships. The next thing is we need to embrace a new identity. Ruth's declaration is not just about location of where she's going to live in Bethlehem or Judah and not Moab. It's not just about her citizenship. It's a profound transformation of her identity. She's abandoning her Moabite heritage. She's embracing God and the people of God. In fact, Ruth ends up being in the lineage of Jesus, which is really kind of interesting, right? It signifies a deep faith, a willingness to step into the unknown. 3 or 4 weeks ago, we talked about Abram when he was called, later Abraham, when he was called to leave the familiar to experience new blessings. We need to embrace a new identity, and that means leaving the old behind so we can also experience new blessings. So the lesson is we need to step into and embrace this new identity in Christ. We too are called to embrace this, that you are a child of God. You are a new person. We accept Christ, we're transformed and made new. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, that's a key word, therefore. Sets up a contrast. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old is gone and the new is here. And again, this involves leaving our old ways behind and stepping into new things. You embrace the new you. Again, this takes faith and it takes trust. The last thing that we need to embrace, we need to embrace our need for community. Okay? When returning, Naomi is greeted by people who recognize her, but they also recognize that she's in a changed state. She's unhappy. She's bitter. She is not happy. She says, I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Despite her pain, she is back in community where God can and does work through others to help her and Ruth. So we need to embrace this need for community. So the lesson is recognize your need. Her return highlights the importance of having others around us, especially in difficult times. We're not meant to walk these journeys alone. God places people in our lives to support and encourage and walk with us. In hard times, we more than ever, that's when we want to pull away. I get that. When we want to pull away and seclude ourselves, that's when we need to do the opposite and lean in to community. Through others, we experience God's love and God's care. We just started a new ministry basically a couple weeks ago called Hearts of Service, and it's making opportunities known where we can help you if you have something going on. We send flowers, we prepare meals, give rides to people. So we as a little community here want to be more available to serve one another. So in summary, when you look at the life of Ruth, there's something about embracing, accepting the challenges of life. Don't have an unrealistic expectation of what life is supposed to look like. Be committed, embracing other people, even when it's hard. Embracing your new identity, recognizing the things that might be getting in the way, hindering you understanding that. And then embracing your need for community. All right? Lots of times we just want to pretend that we are self-sufficient. I think there's probably one more point that we can't just gloss over, and that's how the passage ends, talking about the barley harvest and Boaz. Barley and Boaz. Now, some of you might be relieved because you're thinking, how can you have a message on Ruth but not talk about Boaz? It says they go back just in time for the barley harvest. Arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. When you hear barley harvest, it's important for us to think new provision. Barley harvest, it marks the beginning of the new agricultural year for Israel, which is symbolizes new life and renewal. So when the crops come to fruition, again, it's just a great example, analogy of new provision for us. The barley harvest was considered the first fruit of the harvest. And Christ is considered the first fruit of those who have died. 1 Corinthians 15:20, again, symbolizing the new life and new hope that the harvest brings and that Christ brings. Here, the barley harvest represents the hope and reassurance that after difficult things, there will be blessing and abundance after loss. And this barley harvest is the backdrop for Ruth's encounter with Boaz, who is her kinsman redeemer. When it comes to Boaz, again, the text from Scripture, Naomi had a relative on her husband's side from the clan of Elimelech whose name was Boaz. Boaz is her new protector. So barley signifies new provision. Boaz, if you like, signifies a new protector. Boaz is the kinsman redeemer. Now there's a whole message right there. A kinsman redeemer is somebody who is able to redeem a family member out of a bad situation. Only a family member could fill this role. Somebody else in the story later on, as the story unfolds, somebody else has the opportunity, a closer relative, but they pass on the opportunity. They don't want to share their inheritance. So one passed, but Boaz accepts the opportunity, this role of kinsman redeemer. And again, it's an amazing foreshadow of Jesus, how Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. In fact, the handout this week has a Bible study questions on the back, and it kind of hits on that theme of Boaz being our kinsman redeemer. Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. Boaz was Ruth's kinsman redeemer. Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. And again, the importance of Jesus having to be a human. To be our kinsman redeemer, he has to also be a human. So when you think of barley and Boaz, I want us to think of hope, which is maybe the last lesson, is that we anticipate God's redeeming work. We need to embrace hope. Do you think God is pulling for you, or is he just passively watching? When God sees you walking through life, dealing with little red engine light indicators, is he pulling for you, or is he passively watching? Some of us might at times think he's working against us. We don't see the challenges being good for us and wanting to accomplish something. When that red light went on, I was frustrated, but I was also reminded I was grateful that my air conditioning works. We haven't had a lot of cars that had air conditioning that actually worked. So it made me be grateful for what I have and not just frustrated because the red light goes on. Here's an interesting question. We talk about embracing hope, anticipating God's redeeming work, anticipating the future. Question I have to ask is, does pessimism repel the presence of God? If we're going to be pessimistic, if we're going to be an Eeyore, the Winnie the Pooh character, if you're going to be an Eeyore, does that repel the presence of God? Now, I would say the opposite is not true. Optimism does not draw the presence of God. Okay, being optimistic, that's the law of attraction. We're not going to go there, can't embrace that. But conversely, does our pessimism make it harder for us to recognize God's presence, is a better way to say it. So the questions we're going to challenge everybody with this. How do you view your challenges? How do you view the things that challenge you? Do you see the benefit of them, or you just only see them as a negative? You don't see any redemption that can come from them. Who do you need to renew a commitment to? Who do you need to embrace? Who are you in a relationship with that you need to show that kind of commitment to that Ruth showed to Naomi? Is realizing your new identity being hindered by something that you're holding on to? Ruth leaned into this new identity. She was willing to leave Moab and all those things for it. She turned away from those things and embraced this new identity as one of God's people. You can't have a foot in both places. So are you holding on to something that's making it harder to embrace your new identity? Community. Do you need help? Are you somebody who could use a sense of community? It might not be physical things. It's just the relationship, or maybe it is some physical things. And the other part of that is, how can you offer help? All right. So yeah, do you need community, or could you also be a benefit of community? A couple guys were here earlier this morning mowing the lawn here at the church. It's a little thing, but it's something that we need to have happen. So recognize, can you embrace your need for community? And the last question is, where's your hope level at? Are you a spiritual optimist or a spiritual pessimist? All right, we should be a people of hope as we look to the barley harvest and recognize God does bring people like Boaz into our lives. All right, so we need to be a people of hope. So, well, again, thank you so much for joining us. Take care. God bless.